Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something that sounds, well, really simple, but feels constantly challenging. How we actually spend our 24 hours each day. And you might be surprised by our source material for this one. We're actually looking at a book called How to Live on 24 Hours a Day. It's by Arnold Bennett, and it was published way back in 1910. Now, I know you're probably thinking,
Yeah.
1910. What could a book that old possibly teach us about managing time today with smartphones and everything?
It's a great question, right? But what's amazing is just how relevant Bennett's message still feels, remarkably right on time, you could say. Because even though life looks so different than no internet, no 24/7 news cycle, the core problems, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like there's never enough time, even procrastination, those were just as common then as they are now. It seems a fundamental issue of, how we relate to time that's timeless.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to unpack Bennett's, frankly, quite surprising wisdom. We want to find those practical takeaways and see how this old classic might genuinely change how you see and use what he calls the daily miracle of time. Okay, so let's dive in. Bennett starts with this really radical idea about time. It's not just like money. He says it's more than money. Think about it, everyone. No matter how rich or smart or whatever, gets exactly the same amount, 24 hours, every single day. You can't steal it. You can't save it up. You can't borrow from tomorrow's time. It's like perfectly democratic.
It really is. And yet, isn't it striking how often this daily miracle, as he puts it, just gets, well, wasted? Bennett saw people complaining constantly about not having enough time, but then frittering it away without any divine intervention stopping them. He reckoned most people were just sort of muddling through, not really living on their 24 hours, always saying that thing, oh, I'll change things when I have a bit more time.
Which sounds depressingly familiar, doesn't it?
Exactly. We still hear that all the time.
And then Bennett drops this truth bomb. And it is kind of a gut punch. We never shall have any more time. We have, and we have always had, all the time there is. That whole feeling of needing more time, he basically says it's an illusion. We've got it all right now.
It is a bit of a shock to the system, that idea. But okay, if that's true, if we do have all the time there is,
Right.
why do so many of us feel this constant nagging feeling? Bennett calls it a skeleton at the feast, that sense that we haven't quite got our lives sorted out properly.
Right. And he's clear. It's not just about the basics, like staying healthy, paying the bills, being decent at your job. He noticed that even when people nail those things, the dissatisfaction often lingers. It's this deeper wish to accomplish something outside their formal program, like a thirst for self-improvement, maybe learning something new, often something literary, as you put it. And he thought this applied to basically anyone who sort of evolved past just wanting the bare minimum in life. Anyone looking for something more.
Yeah, he uses this great analogy. It's like wanting desperately to make a pilgrimage to Mecca, this huge life-changing goal. But you never actually leave Brixton. Or, your comfortable couch, your usual routine. Maybe today that's wanting to write a novel but never opening the document. Or learn coding but never starting the first tutorial. His point is simple. You've got to at least start. Take the first step away from Brixton.
Okay, so we have the time, but we feel dissatisfied. What's Bennett's actual plan? How do we use this time better? This brings us to his core idea, arranging a day within a day. He gives this example of a typical London office worker back then, say, works 10 till 6, takes about 50 minutes to commute each way.
Right. And the great and profound mistake people make, Bennett says, is thinking of those office hours, that 10 to 6 block, as the day. And everything else, the 16 hours before and after, that's just the prologue and epilogue, just sort of margin. And that attitude, he says, it just kills interest in your personal time, makes it feel unimportant secondary.
It's like today, when work bleeds into evenings and weekends, right? You're technically off, but your brain isn't. Those hours feel like leftovers.
Exactly. So Bennett flips it.
He says, no, that inner day, for our London guy, that's 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. the next day. Those 16 hours, that's when you're truly free. You're not a wage earner then. You're not defined by your job. You're, in his words, just as good as a man with a private income.
It's about adopting a positive attitude towards that time, seeing it as yours. That mental shift is crucial.
And people might immediately object, right? But if I pour energy into those 16 hours, won't my work suffer during the main 8?
Bennett argues the complete opposite. He actually says it will increase the value of your work. Because the mind, unlike, say, your muscles, doesn't just get tired in the same way. It needs change, variety. It gets bored, basically. So engaging different parts of your brain in the evening can actually make you sharper the next day at work, not duller. Except for sleep, obviously. You still need sleep.
Okay, that makes sense conceptually. But let's get practical. How do you actually find this time? But my day feels jammed already. What did Bennett suggest for carving it out?
Well, first off, he's realistic. He says point blank, there's no easy way, no royal road. It takes effort, sacrifice even. And just making a timetable isn't enough on its own. We've all tried that, haven't we?
Guilty.
So he champions what he calls the petty success approach. His advice: beware of undertaking too much at the start. Be content with quite a little. Maybe start with, say, just aiming for 7.5 hours a week dedicated to this inner day stuff. Just 90 minutes a day, maybe. Actually achieving that small goal builds momentum and self-respect, whereas aiming too high and failing just makes you feel worse and give up. It's kind of the opposite of that go big or go home thing.
Right. Start small, build consistency.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Did he pinpoint specific times people were wasting?
Oh, absolutely. Even back then, the morning commute was a big one. He described the walk to the station as a mental coma. Waiting for the train, mindlessly scanning the newspaper. He called it scattering priceless pearls of time.
Today, that's scrolling through your phone on the bus, maybe, or just zoning out during a walk.
Pretty much. And then the evenings. That classic tired feeling after work, which often leads to just aimless pottering around, maybe some idle chat, or as he put it, flirting with a book, picking it up, putting it down, never really reading.
Ah, I recognize that one.
And then spending ages just thinking about going to bed before actually doing it. He clocked it at 40 minutes for some people. It's like the 1910 version of the pre-bedtime doom scroll.
Wow. Okay, so if we identify these wasted moments, what's the key skill to reclaim them?
It all comes down to one thing for Bennett: controlling the mind. He's very direct about this. He says, the thinking machine is perfectly possible to control, and mastering it is the first element of a full existence. Without that ability to direct your focus, especially now with all the distractions, he argues real living is impossible. You have to be able to tell your brain what to do.
And how do you train it? Like actually practice this mind control?
He gives a really concrete exercise, perfect for that commute he talked about, or any spare few minutes. Pick a subject, any subject to start, and just concentrate on it. He warns you, your mind will wander, probably within seconds. The trick is, every single time it does, you bring it back by the scruff of the neck. Just keep pulling your attention back to the chosen topic. He even notes how easily our minds can focus when something urgent happens, like getting a worrying letter. We have the capacity.
So it's like mental weightlifting, basically. Reps of bringing your focus back.
Exactly. And the beauty is you can do it anywhere, anytime, totally unnoticed. Who is to know, he asks, that you are engaged in the most important of daily acts? You could be on a packed train, deep in self-improvement, and nobody has a clue. He suggests concentrating on something useful eventually, like a passage from Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus, using that found time productively.
Okay, so we've carved out some time. We're working on focusing our minds. How does Bennett suggest we actually use this time for self-improvement, beyond just mental exercise?
Well, a big part of it is cultivating what he calls a reflective mood. Really taking that old advice seriously. Man, know thyself. Which means, actually stopping to think about the big stuff. Like, what genuinely makes you happy? Where is your life actually heading? What role does reason play in how you act day to day? Do your actions actually line up with your principles? It's proper self-examination.
That sounds quite deep. How does he connect that to happiness?
His take is quite interesting. He argues happiness doesn't really come from chasing pleasure after pleasure. It comes from developing your reason and then consciously aligning your actions, your conduct, with your principles, like his example. Instead of losing your temper with a waiter about a burnt steak, using reason leads to a calmer, more effective approach. You state the problem, ask for a solution, dignity intact.
Or being stuck in traffic, maybe. Instead of raging, using reason to accept it and maybe use the time for that mental concentration practice.
Precisely. It's about responding thoughtfully based on principles, not just reacting emotionally.
In this reflection, is it just sitting and thinking, or does reading come into it?
He says it's distinct from reading, but certain books can definitely help prompt it. Thinkers like Pascal, La Bruyere, Emerson. He carried Marcus Aurelius around himself for this purpose.
Right. But what if deep philosophy or literature isn't really your thing? Does self-improvement have to be so...
So bookish? Not at all. That's a key point Bennett makes. He stresses there are enormous fields of knowledge quite outside literature that are just as valuable. Love music. Don't just listen, learn how it works, understand the orchestra. He suggests specific books, like one called How to Listen to Music. Same for art, how to look at pictures or architecture. And even if you think you hate all the arts, his advice is fascinating. Study cause and effect. Study how things develop, how the universe works, evolution. Just observe the world scientifically.
Find what genuinely interests you, basically.
Exactly. He gives these wonderful, almost mundane examples.
Like an estate agent's clerk in London, instead of just doing his job, he could study the local property market. Why did rents go up in Shepherd's Bush after the new tube line opened? Understand the cause and effect.
Or a bank clerk reading up on how the financial system actually works, like with Bagehot's Lombard Street. Or even someone who loves nature but is stuck in the city. Bennett literally suggests going out at night with a net to study the moths around a gas lamp, building real knowledge from simple observation. His point is, nothing in life is humdrum if you look closely enough.
I love that. Okay, so cultivate curiosity.
Yeah.
But he does talk about reading too, right? Serious reading.
He does, but he's quite specific about what counts for self-cultivation. Novels generally are out, even the great ones. Why? Because they don't demand enough appreciable mental application, he says. A good story just pulls you along, right? Rushes you forward like a stiff down a stream, is how he puts it. It doesn't usually require intense mental effort or strain. And for growth, he thinks you need that strain.
Interesting. So what does he recommend for serious reading?
He's a big advocate for poetry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he argues it produces the severest strain of any literature, but also yields the highest form of pleasure and teaches the highest form of wisdom. He knows it's not for everyone, so he suggests starting with an essay about poetry, like Hazlitt's, to get why it matters, and then maybe trying narrative poetry first, like Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Aurora Leigh.
Okay, poetry. A bit challenging for some, maybe. What else?
Absolutely. If poetry's not your cup of tea, he says history is great, like Gibbon's Decline and Fall, big meaty stuff. Or philosophy, he mentions Herbert Spencer's First Principles, again, requires real engagement. The subject matters less than the depth you bring to it.
Got it. And he has specific advice on how to do this serious reading, right?
2 key things. First, define your scope. Don't try to read everything about everything. Pick a limited period or one subject or just one author and stick with that for a while. Focus your effort.
Makes sense. Less overwhelming. What's the second thing?
This one's crucial. Think as well as read. Don't just passively absorb the words. He recommends setting aside significant time just for reflection on what you've read. Maybe, say, 45 minutes of thinking for every 90 minutes of reading.
Wow, that's a high ratio of thinking to reading.
It is. He calls it careful, fatiguing reflection. It means you'll read much more slowly, but he says that's fine. It's about deep understanding, not just getting through pages. Quality over quantity.
Okay, so we've got the plan, the tools. Are there any pitfalls? Things to watch out for as you try to implement this?
Yes, definitely. Bennett includes some important warnings. The first one is, don't become a prig.
A prig.
Yeah, someone unbearably self-righteous about how well they're using their time, looking down on others who are still wasting theirs. He basically says, mind your own business. Focus on your own 24 hours. The world managed fine before you started your time budgeting.
Good advice.
Don't become a slave to a program. The schedule is a tool, not a tyrant. It needs to be flexible. He paints this picture of poor Arthur, who always takes the dog out at precisely 8 o'clock, making life rigid and miserable for everyone. Don't be Arthur. Allow for life to happen.
Right. Discipline shouldn't kill spontaneity.
Exactly. And related to that, avoid developing a policy of rush. Don't get so obsessed with ticking off the next thing on your schedule that you feel constantly stressed and imprisoned by it. If the program feels oppressive, Bennett's advice is simple. Change it. Reconstitute it. Attempt less. It's better to do less consistently and sanely.
That feels very relevant today, with the pressure to optimize everything.
Totally. And maybe the biggest danger he warns about, early failure. Giving up too soon. That's why he stresses starting absurdly slow.
Right.
Make it so easy at the beginning that you can't fail. Build that habit, that regularity first.
And that success, however small, builds something crucial, right? Self-respect.
Immensely so. He says achieving even a small, regular, perhaps tiresome labor builds huge self-confidence. It proves to yourself that you can follow through, and that feeling is the bedrock of purposefulness.
So it all feeds back into itself.
Precisely. And his very last piece of advice on choosing what to do in those reclaimed evening hours is wonderfully liberating. He says, essentially, be guided by nothing whatever but your taste and natural inclination. Don't force yourself to struggle through philosophy if what really fascinates you is, I don't know, the history of London street cries or how bicycles are made. Follow your genuine curiosity. That's what will stick.
That's brilliant. So wrapping this up, this journey into Bennett's surprisingly modern 1910 book, It really seems the core message isn't about finding more time. It's about fundamentally shifting our attitude towards the time we already possess, seeing it differently, valuing it differently.
Absolutely. It boils down to reclaiming that inner day, doesn't it? Training your mind to focus, even just for short bursts. And then using that focus time to pursue whatever genuinely sparks your interest, arts, science, history, or just observing the world more closely.
Right.
It's profound, but also remarkably simple and accessible.
And it feels like less of a rigid system and more of a mindset shift, a call to action for, well, for you listening, for your own life.
Definitely. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. If Bennett was right, and perhaps most people sleep themselves stupid, what could you gain? What could you create or become just by consciously claiming back a small slice of that unmanufactured tissue of the universe of your life, as he called it, and starting to shape it yourself?